Right now, as you're reading 3 words, your brain is performing approximately 20 million billion calculations per second. You're not consciously aware of 99% of what your mind is doing. You're breathing without thinking, your heart is beating, you're filtering out background noise. And somehow, miraculously, these black squiggles on a screen are transforming into meaning in your head. Welcome to PsychLens, where we're going to peek behind the curtain of the most sophisticated machine in the known universe, your mind. You'll discover why you do things you didn't even know you were doing. Let's start with a simple question that will blow your mind. Module 1. Understanding the mind. The human mind is often compared to a vast, unexplored universe. We use it every second of our lives, yet most people spend very little time actually trying to understand how it works. The mind is not just about thoughts and memory. It is about perception, emotions, habits, and even the unconscious forces that drive us. When we talk about unlocking the mind, we are not suggesting that the mind is locked or broken. Rather, the idea is that most of its potential remains unused simply because we don't know how to access it. Think about how a smartphone works. Most people use it for calling, texting, and maybe a few apps. But the device itself is capable of doing far more if you learn the features. Similarly, the human mind has functions that often remain untapped. Unlocking your mind means learning to use these features, such as emotional regulation, critical thinking, creativity, and subconscious processing. This process begins with awareness, because you cannot unlock something you don't even realize is closed. Awareness in psychology refers to the ability to notice your thoughts, feelings, and actions without getting lost in them. For example, imagine you get irritated at a colleague for making a mistake. If you lack awareness, you might snap at them and feel regret later. But if you practice awareness, you pause, recognize the irritation, and choose a calmer response. That small gap between stimulus and response is where unlocking begins. The mind is shaped by 3 primary layers: the conscious, subconscious, and unconscious. The conscious mind is what you use right now to read these words. It's the surface level of awareness. The subconscious holds habits, automatic behaviors, and emotional triggers. The unconscious, as Freud described, is deeper, containing desires, fears, and unresolved conflicts. Unlocking your mind requires working across all these layers, not just trying to think positively on the surface. Real change comes from addressing the deeper layers. Module 2. Self-awareness and reflection. The first skill in unlocking your mind is self-awareness. Many people live on autopilot, repeating patterns without questioning why they do what they do. They wake up, go to work, come back home, watch TV, sleep, and repeat. This routine may feel safe, but it often disconnects them from their deeper desires. To move forward, you need to step out of autopilot and start asking yourself questions. Reflection is one of the simplest yet most powerful tools. Take 5 minutes at the end of each day and ask yourself, what emotions did I feel most strongly today? What triggered them? How did I respond? Over time, this habit reveals patterns. For example, you might notice that you feel anxious every Monday morning before work, or that you get defensive when someone criticizes your ideas. These patterns are signals from your mind about areas that need attention. Real-life examples make this clear. Imagine someone who constantly argues with their partner. On the surface, they might think their partner is the problem. But through reflection, they may realize that every time they feel ignored, it triggers memories of being overlooked as a child. The argument isn't really about the partner. It's about an old wound. Once this realization happens, the person can approach the situation with more clarity instead of reacting blindly. Self-awareness is not about judgment. It's about observation. If you catch yourself procrastinating, instead of calling yourself lazy, you can ask, what am I avoiding and why? Maybe it's fear of failure or perfectionism. By understanding the why behind your behaviors, you begin to gain control. This is the foundation of unlocking your mind, because without awareness, you cannot make conscious choices. Module 3. The power of beliefs. Our beliefs shape how we see the world. They act like a lens, filtering every experience. Some beliefs empower us, while others limit us. For example, if you believe you are not good at public speaking, you may avoid opportunities to speak, and this avoidance reinforces the belief. This is known as a self-fulfilling prophecy. Beliefs are often formed in childhood, long before we are able to evaluate them. A teacher's comment, a parent's criticism, or a childhood experience can plant seeds that grow into lifelong convictions. If a child is told repeatedly that they are careless, they may internalize the belief that they cannot be trusted with responsibility. Even as adults, this belief influences their confidence at work and in relationships. Changing beliefs requires challenging them. One practical way is through evidence. If you believe you are bad with money, start by tracking your spending and noticing small improvements. Each piece of evidence that contradicts the old belief weakens it. Another way is through reframing. Instead of saying, "I'm bad at relationships," you can say, "I'm still learning how to build healthy connections." This shift in language opens the door to growth. Beliefs also influence identity. If you believe you are someone who gives up easily, your identity shapes your actions. But if you begin to see yourself as someone who perseveres, you act differently. Real change begins when you no longer identify with limiting beliefs, but instead create new ones aligned with who you want to be. Module 4. Emotional Intelligences. Unlocking the mind is not only about thinking differently, but also about managing emotions effectively. Emotional intelligence is the ability to understand, regulate, and express emotions in ways that help rather than harm. It is not about suppressing emotions, but learning to navigate them. Consider anger. Anger itself is not bad. It's a signal that something feels unfair or threatening. The problem arises when anger controls you, instead of you controlling it. For example, lashing out in anger can damage relationships, but calmly expressing frustration can actually solve problems. The difference lies in emotional intelligence. A useful technique is to name your emotions. Research shows that labeling emotions reduces their intensity. Saying, "I feel anxious," activates the thinking part of your brain, which helps calm the emotional part. Similarly, practicing empathy, trying to see situations from another person's perspective, helps you respond with understanding instead of judgment. People with high emotional intelligence don't avoid emotions, they work with them. For instance, instead of ignoring sadness, they allow themselves to feel it and then ask, "What is this sadness telling me?" Maybe it's signaling the need for connection or rest. By treating emotions as messages rather than problems, you unlock a deeper understanding of yourself. Module 5. Habitat and the Subconscious Mind. Much of what we do daily is driven by habits. From brushing our teeth to scrolling on our phones, habits are automatic behaviors stored in the subconscious. This is efficient because the brain saves energy by automating tasks. But the downside is that bad habits also get locked in. For example, someone might habitually reach for snacks whenever they feel bored. They may not even realize they're doing it because the action is triggered by boredom, not hunger. To change a habit, you need to understand the cue, the routine, and the reward. This is known as the habit loop. Breaking a bad habit isn't just about stopping the behavior. It's about replacing it. If boredom triggers snacking, you can replace it with drinking water or taking a short walk. The key is to keep the cue but change the routine. Over time, the subconscious rewires itself. Building good habits also works in small steps. Trying to meditate for an hour daily is unrealistic for a beginner, but starting with 2 minutes is manageable. Once the habit is established, you can expand it. This method, known as habit stacking, is one of the most effective ways to reprogram the subconscious. The subconscious mind doesn't respond well to force but to repetition. The more consistently you practice a habit, the deeper it sinks into the subconscious. Unlocking your mind requires training your subconscious, because that's where real, lasting change happens. Module 6. Creativity and Imagination. One of the most underrated aspects of the human mind is creativity. Many people think creativity only belongs to artists, musicians, or writers, but in truth, every human being uses creativity daily. Creativity is not just about painting or composing. It is about problem solving, generating new ideas, and looking at situations from fresh angles. When you find a new route to work because of traffic, that is creativity. When you come up with a different way to explain something to a child, that is creativity.